Do you want your aim to look like this?
What?
Yet it still feels terrible even after spending hundreds of hours playing Valorant. I know this feeling can make it harder to understand the core reason why you can't aim properly. This is why in this video, I'm going to give you 5 simple steps to fix your aim. With that said, let's get right into it. Step 1 isn't a direct task to fix your aim. Instead, it's something you need to first recognize. Your aim won't ever be at 100% at all times when you play. Instead, aiming comes in the form of probabilities. Let me explain. I'm not saying that aiming isn't a skill you can't learn and that it purely comes to chance. What I'm saying is each duel you take has a probability factor of whether you win it or not based on any number of factors that influence around. It could be anything from utility to the map and even your own experience that creates different sets of probabilities. This is why when people mention duels or angles that are more common or more clear-cut, they'll often call these 50-50 duels, since it's a coin flip on who can win the fight. You can think of this like when two players of an equal skill level swing each other at the same time with the same exact weapons and utility at their disposal. That fight inherently has a 50-50 chance or probability of one player killing the other. But the thing is, how often can you say you've seen that exact scenario happen in a match? I can count on all my fingers the number of times I've seen a true 50-50 fight in my ranked games. Several factors can affect a duel, such as ping, agents, util usage before and after the swing, the guns used, the time remaining in the round, and the bomb status. These factors can influence a fight in multiple ways, drastically changing the probability of winning a fight. For example, let's say you're defending on Pearl. You take a duel with someone at a long distance angle, like from B long. The chances for you to hit your shot are way different than if you were fighting from inside connector, defending the mid push. Think of it like you have a 4 out of 10 chance of getting a kill at distance because of factors like first shot accuracy, the weapon that you might be using, and the utility the enemies use to clear B long. While in connector, you might have more like an 8 out of 10 chance to win the duel. This could be due to angle advantages, the closer distance making your bullets more accurate, and the fact that attackers might use more utility to get into art or B link before scaling into connector, which gives you time to prepare for the fight. Therefore, these varying circumstances can create unfair aim duels for either player. So what does this mean for fixing your aim? Let's look back quickly at when you first started playing Valorant to show how this understanding can benefit you. When you first started playing Valorant, you might have struggled with the easy, medium, or hard bots depending on your FPS experience. That isn't necessarily a bad thing, but what this can tell you is what types of fights you should or shouldn't be taking based on how well you handle the level of bots or your overall experience in the game. If you get 30 on easy but struggle with hitting 30 on medium, you might find yourself at a mid-level of mouse control and aim. This can show you're more likely to win fights against the average gold, plat, or maybe even diamond player in the right circumstances. However, if you struggle with hitting 10 on the easy bots because Valorant is or was your first FPS, you might find it really hard to even wide swing into angles with great levels of confidence. So in this case, taking your time to aim might give you a better probability to win the fight. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're destroying easy and medium bots while hitting great scores on hard bots, you could challenge yourself more to take different types of duels and potentially have a higher probability of winning those duels. Now, you can apply the same concept to common or uncommon duels you encounter in game. Depending on your aiming skills, you'll be able to know which areas of the map and scenarios will give you a good, fair, or unfair advantage in a gunfight. Let's compare back to the 2 areas we were fighting in Pearl. If you know you have an 8 out of 10 chance of winning your fight in connector, especially when certain conditions are met, then you can actively look to commit to taking more fights there. On the other hand, if you're not fully confident in taking the B long fight, it's like a 3 or 4 out of 10 chance fight for you, you don't have to commit to that gunfight. You can just jiggle peek or jump peek and fall back when necessary to take fights under your own condition. If fighting halls will give you a 6 to 7 out of 10 chance to win the gunfight, then stay alive so that you can take that fight. I would take that fight over the 3 out of 10 fight any day of the week if I could choose to do so. And if you need help identifying your level of aim and your key areas of strengths and weaknesses, you can book a free assessment call with me or one of my coaches using the link in the description. During the call, we can get to know you better by asking you some questions and taking a look at your tracker to help identify your biggest bottleneck. And during the call, if you want to continue working with my team of a dozen Radiant and VCT coaches, including rank 1 players like Jawa, we can also discuss which coaching options we have available that best suit your needs. We have packages that start at less than $1 a day, all the way up to our flagship 10-week Immortal Roadmap program that guarantees a 500 RR rank up or you don't pay. So don't wait, because these calls are first come, first serve. Now that you're thinking about probabilities with your aim, depending on your skill level, step 2 is naturally going to focus on pushing your limits and improving our skills to increase our probability of winning different types of duels. This way, you're not completely restricting yourself to taking only certain gunfights and boxing yourself in as a player. Most people think playing more deathmatch and continuing to practice the same aim training routine consistently is eventually going to get them to improve, but that advice can be very misleading. You can't keep the same training routine for a year and expect to improve at the same rate. For example, I love doing this range routine where I flick and microadjust from left to right with jet knives. But if I do the same routine for 6 months in a row, I'll start to get comfortable with it and find that my improvement stagnates. So I'll find a way to make the task more difficult. Instead of using jet knives, I might play ISO and include orbs, or I might play gradually faster beats on a metronome and try to kill the boss to the beat. These methods are just some examples of raising the ceiling and creating a new floor, like trying to lift heavier weights at the gym. For example, once you've gotten used to doing sets of 10 pull-ups, in your next training session, you can try and do sets of 11 pull-ups, or you can do the same set of 10 pull-ups but with added weights. Now, slowly raising the difficulty of your routines is important. However, it still wouldn't be the most effective use of our time if we're not able to identify which practice routines work on your weakest skills. You don't want to be that guy that has a huge upper body with skinny chicken legs. In the same way, don't just keep playing the same routines that you like, but make sure you're working on the skills that will actually help you improve. And one of the aiming skills that many players overlook is actually crosshair placement, which brings us to step 3. Getting familiar and working on every detail when it comes to crosshair placement. No, I'm not talking about making sure you aim at head height, which is literally only one aspect of crosshair placement. Right now, I'm talking about everything. Headshot placement, pre-aim versus angle peeling, map knowledge, the distance you're fighting in, reading enemy movements, timings, etc. They're all key components of crosshair placement, because the reality is just aiming at head height isn't enough. For example, what if you didn't expect the enemy to swing out wide in the open and your crosshair ends up trailing behind? What if your opponent jiggled the angle but you weren't ready for a crouch peek right after? In order to have good crosshair placement, you have to be able to predict opponents through good game sense and utilize the details you've learned over time. Think of having good crosshair placement like you're playing a reveal initiator at all times. At the highest level of play, players can read movements and understand positions of players exactly like as if they're scanned by a reveal from Sova or Fade. It's part of why when you watch matches from VCT, even with the wall hacks from spectating, it looks like the players themselves can often be wall hacking with how well they read their opponent's movement. It's not because they're cheating, it's because they have better game sense. They can predict where their opponents will go and what they'll be doing before they take any aim duels, which makes their aim that much better through crosshair placement. This ties very well into step 1 when we talked about aim duel probabilities. The more experience and game sense you build up, you'll start to have better crosshair placement, and you'll also start to pick up on which positions and angles you have an advantage in depending on each round's game state. A practical way to help you build up some basic crosshair placement fundamentals is through dry runs. Dry runs are simply you going into a map you're struggling with in a custom game, then clearing angles with the best crosshair placement and pre-aim possible. This isn't something you have to necessarily warm up with. In fact, it might be better after you're done with your games for the day. You can think of it like a cooldown and an opportunity for you to fix your mistakes from earlier games. For example, you might remember that you lost a lot of gunfights in A main on Fracture. So when you go into a custom game to revisit that fight, you might realize that you were actually losing a lot of those fights because you didn't notice how the ground dips deeper into main, so your crosshair placement was too high. So if you think your crosshair placement could use some work, the next time you play, try setting aside a few minutes to the end of your day by looking back at the fights that you lost, then practicing better crosshair placement in that offline server. This is even better with friends, since you and your friend can both practice awkward duels you're losing on maps that you aren't 100% confident in. When I spoke with Chet at TwitchCon back in 2022, he told me this is exactly what Chet and Ye did during practices, which is one of the reasons why Ye is now known for his robotic crosshair placement. If you want to meet like-minded individuals to practice with, you can join our IRP community for less than $1 a day, and you'll also get access to weekly live lessons, scrims, and office hours directly from me. Now that you understand how important it is to work on the different aspects of your crosshair placement, the fourth step you need to understand is how putting too much focus on aim trainers can actually be your biggest distraction to improving your crosshair placement and other in-game aiming mechanics. Now, don't take this the wrong way. Aim trainers are still a good and practical tool to use. In fact, I encourage you to try out aim trainers like Aim Labs and Kovaaks with a simple playlist I've used before in my free Discord server. However, if you only focus on aim training before every single ranked game, you lose out on the very thing you're training for, and that's Valorant. This is especially true for players Diamond and below. No matter how much you might increase your score on tasks, the reality of your skill in aim trainers is that you often can't mimic everything that happens in Valorant. You have crosshair placement, different bullet spreads, different first bullet accuracy, different recoil patterns, the aiming with your movement, and the list can go on and on. All these components make an impact on how well you aim in game, and aim trainers can't help you work on them. While you may be very good at certain aim training tasks, you won't be as good in Valorant. So then why care about aim trainers at all? Aim training can help you with a key part of any FPS on a mouse and keyboard, and that's your mouse control. Mouse control is the largest foundational aspect behind raw aim, which is why you still benefit greatly from using aim trainers in Valorant, despite it not being directly related in every task that's offered. So the main takeaway is this: ask yourself this as you play both Valorant and your aim trainer of choice. Am I a better aimer in Kovaaks and Aim Labs, or am I a better aimer in Valorant? If it's the latter, you have a good balance between the two. But if it's the former, you definitely need more reps in Valorant. And putting in more reps into Valorant plays into our final fifth step, which is one of the easiest solutions to fix your aim, but with one of the hardest sacrifices you have to make. You have to play enough ranked games to transfer your training over in game. Ranked is not an easy beast to deal with sometimes, and it can often be easier to avoid it if we want to find a reason for why our aim isn't getting better. That fear of losing, bad experiences, or deranking can greatly affect our aim even with all the training we just mentioned. Since the reality is, all the aim training, range practice, DMs, or any other factor outside of ranked will never build your aim up enough for actually playing enough of the real game. This ties back to step 3, where we talked about how game sense is a huge part of aim and crosshair placement. You simply won't develop that if you're not playing enough games. This is why we require players that we coach to play a minimum of 3 games a day to ensure they're actively implementing everything that they're learning. Think of it like this: all the training that you're doing outside of playing a ranked game is like homework and practice problems that you work on to prep for the actual exam. Sometimes doing homework can be challenging, but the real challenge is when you're tested with no notes in front of you. That's what a ranked game is like, and it's something you have to get over in order to reach your highest aiming potential. So don't put some false expectation of a result after you do all this training to win every ranked game. No one does. Even the pros don't win every game. In fact, if you were to grade their ranked games like a math test, most would have a D or an F, not an A, based on their win rate. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.